Hey guys, today we are sharing our top tips for traveling around India, especially if it's going to be our first time there.
We've just spent an entire month traveling around India and we can't wait to share our experiences with you.
From the chaos of the streets to the amazing food, India can be a little bit overwhelming.
Oh, I don't need a guide actually.
Guide is neat for everybody to have a guide.
But it is part of the magic. Let's get started, shall we?
We are Aaron and Shar, and we are embarking on a one-year adventure around the world. In August of 2024, we traded our paychecks for backpacks to explore all that this incredible planet has to offer. We started our journey in Asia, and we are now heading to Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. We believe that traveling does not have to be expensive, so we are embracing the world on our own terms. Join us as we journey around the world, learn about diverse cultures, go local, and make every day an adventure. Now let's get back to the video.
We just had an incredible time in India. We started our trip at New Delhi, the bustling capital of India, and then we headed to Haridwar and Rishikesh, which are the spiritual heart of India. And these are the two of many cities where the holy Ganges River actually flows through. After that, we did a 3-day hike in the Himalayas near Manali. And then we visited Agra, home to the Taj Mahal, which is also one of the 7 wonders of the world. And then we visited Jaipur, which is the pink city.
And then we took an overnight train to Mumbai and then we headed to Chennai before flying off from there.
This was not a luxury trip. In fact, everything was really local. We traveled mostly by ourselves without any guides.
We took public transportation when we can and we didn't go for any tours.
It has been a while, right? And we are very excited to share with you some of the tips so that you can make the most of your India travels.
Let's start with our first impressions. As you probably already know, India is sensory overload in every way possible. The vibrant colours, the chaotic traffic, and the smells of the street hits you all at once.
It is a country where there's ancient traditions that coexist with rapid modernization, and we could feel this unique energy every single day.
The crowds, the noise, and the cultural differences can make India very overwhelming at first, but they are all that makes India so special and unique.
One of the biggest myths is that India everywhere can be very chaotic, and we come to realize that this is not very true. In fact, there are mountainous areas called the hill stations, and there is also peaceful towns and serene beaches, as well as temples that offers like a very serene and relaxing atmosphere. And even in the busiest of cities like in Delhi or in Mumbai, we come to realize that there is an order in there as well.
Everything seemed chaotic at first because we're just unfamiliar with the system. Another myth about India is that it is extremely unsafe.
Yeah, India is not the safest country in the world, but we just have to be very cautious, just like where we are traveling anywhere else. However, we found locals tend to be very helpful and very welcoming too.
And because it was my first time in India, we stuck to the big cities, the crowded places, and we did a lot of research beforehand.
And for me, we had some friends in India too, so they gave us some really nice insider tips of traveling around the cities.
So yeah, we just have to stay aware and take precautions when we're traveling to India.
Another misconception is that people there eat spicy curry every single day. When I heard that, I know this was never going to be true. For a country that is so big and so diverse, the largest in terms of population size in the world, Indian food, as we discovered from our travels there, has been extremely diverse.
We had Malai chicken, we had vada pav, we had pani puri and so much more, so don't be worried if you don't eat curry. Let's get started with some practical tips.
In this section, we're going to share with you how to get around inside a city as well as traveling in between cities as well.
To get within a city, people usually take the metro or the bus or tuk-tuks. And if somewhere is quite near, you can try to walk there, but be careful because there might not be sidewalks or you might have to share the sidewalks with motorbikers.
We experienced quite a little bit of it in Delhi where the motorbikes had to come up onto the sidewalks even though there was still space on the streets, just so that they could beat the traffic right in front of them.
Auto rickshaws are the most convenient way to get around the city and that's what we usually take. They are also called tuk-tuks in other places and autos mostly in India. So this is how we do it. When we flag down an auto, we haggle with the driver and we agree on a price before getting into the auto. At first, we were a little bit unfamiliar with the range of prices, but what we did was to refer to the government's guideline and also kind of estimate how far we're going or like how long it takes or how inconvenient the place is. And then we had like this internal amounts, like this internal maximum amount that we had in our mind before approaching the driver.
Most of the time, we'll also walk away and another driver will come instantly and they'll offer a slightly better price.
We noticed that when we are near the tourist attractions, the auto drivers tend to quote a very high and sometimes ridiculous price. What we did was to walk about a street or two away from a tourist attraction where the auto drivers actually offered a more reasonable price.
One thing that we knew from our travels is that despite our persistent haggling, we are still going to be charged foreigners' price.
Another alternative is to use ride-hailing apps like Uber or Ola, and you can mostly use these in the big cities.
They're quite common, they're quite frequent, and most people find it more reliable because like you get your price upfront too. There's quite a lot of types of vehicles that you can choose from too. Some of them are autos, some of them are cars, so you can choose based on the number of people that you are traveling with.
In Mumbai, the autos go by the meter, so when you enter the auto, just make sure that they reset the meter before you start your trip.
I think that only applies to Mumbai because that's the only city that we have traveled to that uses the meter. Our experience riding autos has been generally quite smooth, I would say, except for a few times where maybe the roads are a little bit more bumpy or you can smell the gas and the fumes at traffic junctions, and there are also no seat belts as well.
Yeah, so sometimes when the auto driver does an emergency brake, you might be like, woof, moving forward. So be sure to be able to catch onto something if the driver does that.
There are also bigger autos as well, and these autos are the ones that ply within the city, maybe towards different neighborhoods.
So what happens is that an auto might be heading to one direction and there might already be people in the auto, but if you're heading in the same direction, you can just hop on and pay like a smaller amount as compared to renting or like getting the whole auto to yourself. We have also been traveling quite a bit by the metro, and riding the metro is quite fun for us because we get to see how people travel day to day.
There are also newer metro lines that are being built as well, such as in Agra, where we actually took the metro for the first time, and I think it only opened like a month or two and there are only 6 stations, but it's a sign of progress. And usually traveling via the metros are quite affordable and reasonably priced. Definitely much cheaper than taking an auto for sure. And all you have to do is to get like a metro card or a QR code ticket, or I believe like there are also options where, especially in New Delhi, you can actually purchase the ticket using the app or the WhatsApp, which I think is quite cool if you know how to do that. Getting onto the metros is actually very convenient, and there's this element of safety as well because like there's actually security before you enter to the gantry area.
Usually there's a separate line for males and females.
Getting into the metro is not a problem, but getting out of the metro, especially in a very crowded area and very busy area, could be a very huge problem. We had this experience where we couldn't get out of the metro at one point and we were panicking.
So the lesson is we had to move towards the exit before we actually reached our stop. And on the other hand, when we are not at our stop, try not to block the entrance.
Yeah, I think that's the golden rule.
We also observed that there are female-only carriages in the cities that we visited, so do take note if you are not a female.
Buses was also one of the more common forms of transport that we took. In fact, for buses, it brings us more conveniently around for places where the metros in the city wouldn't be able to bring us there. For these buses, it's as affordable as boarding a metro. It probably will cost maybe like 10 or 20 rupees depending on how far you're traveling. A little bit more as well if you're traveling a long distance. So it is really good to have some loose change with us around. The bus conductor would come to ask us for our monies, and we'll tell him where we are going and they'll tell us how much it would cost.
Something that we've never experienced before is that we had to keep our eyes peeled for the buses because they come and go so quickly, and if you don't board the bus on time, they might just go past.
There are also private buses too, and these private buses travel along the same streets as the public buses.
These public buses might not appear on Google Maps, so what we had to do was to stand at a bus stop, and as a bus go by, the bus conductor will be shouting where the bus is heading, and then if that is where we're heading, we will just board the bus.
Apparently some of these private buses in certain cities also run more frequently than the government buses.
There are many ways to travel between cities. Other than flying or driving, you can take the train or the buses.
There are many intercity trains and they run almost every day. The first thing that we had to do was learn how to book an intercity train. And for these intercity trains, you can get the tickets at the train stations or you could get it online as well. And we use the IRCTC website, which is the government-owned website to actually purchase the tickets.
We had to book our tickets in advance, especially for the one that we had to take from Jaipur to Mumbai. For that train ride, we almost couldn't get the first class AC, which was the class that we wanted. There are many train classes in India, such as the General Unreserved, the Sleeper class, the AC 2 or 3 tier, and also the AC First class. Welcome to our first class AC room. We'll leave a link in the description below to a blog page where we use to understand the differences between the different classes.
In short, some of the classes have aircon, some of them do not, some of them have more privacy, and some of them have less privacy. Of course, all the prices are very different.
If you're interested in how a first class AC experience is like, check out our video. We took a first class AC overnight train from Jaipur all the way to Mumbai.
I think one of the bigger questions that we had to ask ourselves is whether there's food on the train. Some of the intercity trains include food in the train ticket and some of them do not. And some of them you have to purchase separately.
On one of the first train rides, we didn't know that we had to check the train ticket on the website. So we actually ate before we boarded the train. And then when we got onto the train, they actually served us food. And by then we were too full to finish the food that they served us.
By the way, the food is like airplane food and it tastes quite delicious. It comes in warm and
you get a dessert like ice cream after that. It's like a full meal.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible and they give you water as well.
For the Jaipur to Mumbai intercity train that we took, we realized that we could actually book food in advance. So we went to the IRCTC e-catering website and then we could choose what food we want and where the food will be delivered. So we ordered some food and when the train arrived at the station, someone actually brought the food up to our cabin and gave it to us. It was so convenient and seamless. We loved it. Otherwise, there's always people walking up and down the train selling food, selling drinks, selling snacks. For us, we usually try to get some snacks before we board the train, such as buying from the platform or buying from a supermarket nearby, just so that neither of us gets too hungry on the train.
Some other observations that we had when we were at the train stations was that there are a lot of people sitting around, people touting. Train stations in India can be quite chaotic and very busy at the same time. And there are also multiple platforms.
We always try to reach the train platform about 15 to 30 minutes before our train arrives. And that is because we had to give ourselves some time to find the correct platform and the correct door to enter. What we found out was that the train can get really long and it can take 10 minutes to walk from one end of the train to the other end of the train.
If you ask us which is like the most beautiful train ride that we have on, which do you think it is?
Definitely the one that we had to wake up the earliest for. And that is the toy train ride from Shimla to Kalka.
And I think that was the most beautiful train ride because it traverses through 103 different tunnels going from the foot of the mountain to like the capital of Himachal Pradesh, which is called Shimla. I was just blown away by the amazing beauty early in the morning where we can see the sunrise and it's just really beautiful.
There are also intercity buses, but we can only speak based on our experience to and from Manali because that was the only intercity bus that we took.
And as with any other long distance bus rides, there are bound to be rest stops. One of the problems that we encountered was that we didn't really know where these rest stops are and for how long we get to stop at these rest stops.
On the bus ride back from Manali to Delhi, we actually had a huge shock because once the bus arrived into Delhi early in the morning, there was a ton of auto drivers approaching the bus and asking whether, oh, do you want to take a tuk-tuk, do you want to take an auto? And we were quite overwhelmed by that. But fortunately, we knew that we wanted to take a metro, so we were so glad that we actually had a plan beforehand. Next, let's move on to cultural tips.
India is such a huge country with so many diverse culture and traditions, and it's precisely because of its diversity, I kind of want to embrace all of it. And in order to do all of that, we have to respect the cultural traditions of different places.
We come from Singapore where it's very casual and not very formal, so we had to do a lot of reading up to understand the culture and the norms of India. Let's start with dressing.
We have learned a bit about how to dress when we are traveling around India for a month. Not in terms of the traditional Indian attires, but the level of modesty. We saw how men usually wear long pants when they go around, and how women are always donned in like very colorful outfits.
For us in India, we mostly wore long pants and either short sleeve or long sleeve clothes instead of sleeveless. For some temples and sacred sites that we visited, we needed to have a cover-up. At some masjids or temples, we could rent a sarong for a cover-up, but I think it would have been more convenient if we had our own cover-up.
Some of these religious sites also required us to take off our shoes before entering. There's a storeroom to store our shoes, and there's usually a shoe keeper, and this shoe keeper will usually expect a tip or two from you. But I usually say no, and I'll only give them the tip after they have given our shoes back to us.
The other way was that we brought plastic bags with us, so we kept our shoes in our plastic bags and put those plastic bags in our bag, and then we headed into the temple. While traveling around India, there were instances where people asked us to take pictures with them. Generally, we don't mind taking pictures with them, but for me, I tend to avoid taking pictures with males only, so if it's like a family or like another female, I wouldn't mind. There are also other instances where people ask us to take photos of them, like just of them without us inside, and we found it a bit weird because there was no way we could print the pictures and give it to them. But we just took the pictures anyway, and they turned out amazing.
We also met a lot of friendly people as well during our travels, and most of them are people on the streets or people that we met on the bus or people we met on the trains. And they are very kind and helpful and give us information that we need to better our travels around the city. But something that is also on top of our head as well is that some people can be very friendly at the beginning to us. They'll talk to us, they'll chat with us, but then at the end of the day, we realize that they are trying to sell us something, and usually we just say no and thank you.
Another thing that happened quite often was that a lot of people were staring at us. In our culture, staring at other people can come off as quite rude, but in India, we found that it was quite common to be stared at. We just try not to get offended.
We had a lot of encounters with Indian hospitality as well. In India, they treat guests like God, and they treat you really well, giving you food, and we had a couple of experiences as well with either strangers that we met along the way and turned friends afterwards.
And when we visited old friends, we were repeatedly served chai and snacks all the time throughout the day. Indian hospitality is just on another level. We tried to return the favor by bringing them some snacks.
Yeah, that's the least that we could do.
Another thing that shocked us was how late their dinner timings are. Back home, we usually eat at like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Here in India, they eat at 8 p.m, 9 p.m, and sometimes at 11 p.m. That's like my bedtime.
Now, let's talk about food, my favorite subject.
We spent an entire month in India, but there are so many dishes we have yet to try.
Because of how big and diverse India is, there's a lot of regional food specialties.
Every region has a different cooking style and flavor that reflects its culture and history. For example, New Delhi is famous for butter chicken and chole bhature, while Mumbai is famous for pav bhaji and vada pav.
There's a lot of different vegetarian food, but there's also a huge selection of non-vegetarian food which focuses on like either chicken or lamb, but rarely beef and pork.
There is also international cuisines around, but these have to be hunted and they are more accessible if you are in a city. Indian cooking uses lots of spices, but not to worry, not all food are spicy. For us, when we visit a restaurant, we ask the server how spicy a dish is, and if we suspect that the dish might be too spicy, we just ask for less spice.
And of course, there's masala chai as well. And this is something that I've been craving the most ever since we traveled from India. In fact, I'm craving it right now. Masala chai can be found almost everywhere on the streets of India. They come in like paper cups or clay cups. It costs only like 10 or 20 rupees, but like the flavor is so intense and I really love it.
They can get quite sweet though.
It's a quintessential Indian experience.
When we visit restaurants or like street food, we try to go to those that are more popular, just so that we know that there is a high food turnover and it's also more likely that the food is delicious.
Throughout our month in India, we stayed in a couple of Airbnbs, and some of these Airbnbs has a kitchen. And so we decided that we wanted to do some cooking in the kitchen. But when we went to the supermarkets, we realized there's no fresh produce.
No fresh vegetables, no eggs, no meat, nowhere to be found.
Turns out for this fresh produce, you can only get them from the local markets, which we have no idea where they are.
So for us, we use grocery delivery apps like Swiggy and Zepto to bring food in.
So for the next part, we're going to cover health and safety tips. And first up, it's the common scams.
There are many common scams that we have read about, and fortunately we managed to avoid them.
There's one particular scam that we read about that's really disgusting. It's the poop on shoes scam. Like there will be somebody who will come to you and apply like cow dung on your shoes, and somebody else will tell you that there is cow dung in your shoes and tell you to go somewhere to actually do a shoe shine. and they will charge you a ridiculous amount for this cleanup.
Another common scam is that auto drivers or tuk-tuk drivers might tell you that, oh, the hotel that you're heading to has closed down, or this attraction that you're going to is closed today. And what they will do is that they'll bring you to another attraction where they will earn a little bit of commission, but actually the hotel or the attraction that you're going to is not closed at all. For that, just try to read up on the latest news and maybe contact your hotel if needed. Another common scam is fake tourist guides. Sometimes when you visit an attraction, there might be people claiming to be like an official tourist guide, but actually they are not anyone that has been appointed by the government, and then they might charge you an exorbitant amount to guide you through the attraction, where they don't really give much information or bring you around the attraction and just want to head off to the next customer.
These fake tourist guides will also claim that they'll know all the best Instagram spots. Some of these attractions would have like a specific pricing that is displayed on the outside that tells you how much you're supposed to pay for these guides. For many of these scams, we actually learned about it through Carl Rock on YouTube. I'm going to leave his link in the description below. While we might have also avoided common scams, we had a couple of situations where it has left us a distasteful feeling. One particular incident that happened to us was this idea of the security guide. And he is like a security guard that is doing a role of a tour guide. He instructed us to enter our next room and basically gave us a small little crash course about the tomb's history. And also even asked us to pose for photos afterwards. Towards the end, he asked us for a small little tip. But all this while in our heads, we were thinking like, is he really moonlighting or is he actually a fake security guard? I do not know. What do you think?
He was dressed in the security guard uniform, so I don't know.
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience.
Another incident that happened to us was regarding this auto driver in Agra. This auto driver originally brought us from the train station to our hotel, and on the way he offered us this like half-day tour package where he would bring us around to the various places and wait for us while we are visiting these attractions. After much discussion, we finally agreed on a price for a half-day tour. But what happened was that he left us in the middle of the tour.
Yeah, that was kind of like a shock to us because he didn't even complete the entire tour. It was like halfway through.
We were less than 3 hours into the tour, and then he just decided to end his service there and demanded the full amount. So what we had to do was to like negotiate with him on reducing the amounts, and we felt that it was kind of like a scam because he said that he would bring us around, and we initially didn't even want this service, but then we decided to take on this service, and then he didn't bring us around and we had to find our own way back to the hotel.
It's kind of like a shock to our system because it also made us question, did he ever intend to bring us around Agra in the first place? There's also another incident that happened which we found really laughable as well, and this happened between our trip from Jaipur to Mumbai on our long distance train ride. There's this guy who came into our bunk and wanting to set up the bed sheets, and he set up the bed sheets and asked us for 500 rupees as tips. 500 rupees! Like, that is insane to me because it's not normal for that amount of tips to be given. Just for simply putting bed sheets onto our bunk.
A single bunk.
One bunk.
We didn't mind giving him some tips, but he rejected our amount and asked for 500 rupees. But we knew that we weren't supposed to tip anyone on the train, and we decided not to tip him the 500 rupees because it was way too much. Afterwards, when the train conductor came by, we asked the train conductor if like it was normal to be tipping people, and turns out it was no, we weren't supposed to tip anyone, and the train conductor scolded the guy who asked for a tip. It was so funny. He made the guy apologize to us, which we felt really awkward about, but anyways. So
I think it's really the lack of education, the lack of enforcement, the cultural norm, as well as maybe like the socio-economic mobility, that there's a lot of different factors that led to like the reasons why these scams actually exist in India. I wouldn't say that everyone in India is scamming. Like, there are definitely a few operators, there's definitely a few people who does all of that tourist scams, but they only make up a small little fraction of the people in India.
Just try not to be pressured into tipping or doing something that you probably wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the next part, which is about eating and drinking in India. Eating and drinking in India, it's like always a challenge for tourists because you have read it somewhere that like it's not the most sanitary situation all the time.
First and foremost, tap water in India is not potable. What we do is that we always drink from bottled water, and we always check that the water bottle is sealed.
Bottled water are actually quite affordable. They are between like 10 to 40 rupees depending on the brand. depending on the volume and where you actually got this bottled water from.
It's very important to stay hydrated, especially in the heat, so we did not hesitate to buy bottled water. We also use bottled water to brush our teeth just to be safe. When we eat outside, we try to avoid raw vegetables and fruits because they might use contaminated water to wash them. And we also try to avoid drinks with ice in them.
Yeah, Shah had a situation.
I'm not sure where or how I got it, but somehow at the start of a trip, I got the Delhi belly. And as you all know, it's when you get a stomach ache from the food or the drink. But fortunately, we brought antibiotics, we brought salt packets, and I managed to recover quickly after that. I was so weak that I couldn't stomach anything for 2 days in a row. It was crazy.
With regards to eating out, I think it's really important to make sure that the food itself is cooked very well and you can see that they are cooked hot enough. It's not that street food is not edible, it's just that you have to have a good tolerance for it and to make sure that it looks good, and there are a lot of locals going to that shop as well.
It's always good to be able to see how they prepare and cook their food, definitely. Here are some other things that we do for health and safety.
One of the things that we always do when we're traveling around India is to keep an eye on our belongings. I think it's probably because of the nature of there's just a lot of people around or whatsoever. We always have our bags locked so that it doesn't get stolen.
Another thing that we do is that we got medications before we headed to India. We went to the travelers clinic to get some malaria pills. Malaria is prevalent in some places of India, so we just took a pill every single morning just to make sure that we don't fall sick from malaria.
We also apply sunscreen every day. I think even though some parts of the cities that we go to could be a little bit hazy, I think it's still good to also apply sunscreens to protect yourself from the UV rays.
We also got some bug spray and insect repellent because sometimes there are just flies everywhere and sometimes there are rain flies. We just want to avoid any of them.
So this is a section where we'll do some quick fire tips. The first tip is when planning a trip to India, there are 3 things to consider. Number 1 is the weather, number 2 is the air quality, and number 3 is the activities. India could be really hot during the summer months, and we are talking about temperatures that are above 40 degrees Celsius. And this could be really, really painful to go out and really hot, especially during the day. And then it comes to the monsoon months as well. These monsoon months would last a few months, starting from August all the way to October. This would bring in the rainy season. Most people would recommend to go to India, especially in the northern parts of India, during the nicer and drier season, which is happening during December all the way to January.
And then for number 2, air quality. This is something to note if you're heading to New Delhi, especially during the months of October to November. We had the worst time breathing air. Everything was so dirty, everything was so polluted. It was so hard to find clean air anywhere in Delhi.
The air pollution could be caused by crop burning in northern parts of India, or traffic pollution in Delhi, or because of fireworks during the festive seasons. Number 3 would be the activities that you want to do. Most people would have heard only about the Golden Triangle, which is Delhi, Agra and Jaipur, but there are many things that you can do beyond the Golden Triangle. For example, if you want to seek spirituality, you go to Rishikesh or Haridwar, or even Varanasi as well. Or if you're adventure hikers like us, we went to Manali, or I heard that there is a couple of other northern states such as Jammu, Kashmir states, or even Ladakh that is so beautiful, and they're all up in the Himalayas and they have beautiful hiking tracks too.
Next quick fire tip is to always carry small change. We want to avoid situations where we pay way too much because the service provider doesn't have change for us. Cards are accepted but not for street vendors, so if you don't have the QR code payment method, it's best to carry small change.
The next tip is to also travel light. And for us, backpacking is the best way to travel light, and we find it so much easier to move around with our backpacks than just traveling around with our luggage.
Especially on trains.
Yeah.
The next tip is to get a SIM card in India. They are super affordable and you can get a number with that SIM card, which helps in a lot of things like calling people or ordering food. It's really so much easier with an Indian number. Also, do check if you need a visa to enter India because sometimes the processing can take a few days, so you can't get it the day before you're going to fly off.
One last tip I would have is also to learn some basic Tamil or Hindi or Indian phrases wherever you go. I think it will go a long way as you travel. For example, if you're going northern India, we'll say Namaste or Dhanyabad. Or if you're going to Tamil Nadu state where they speak predominantly Tamil, we'll say Vanakkam or Nandri. So those are the top tips for traveling around India.
Hopefully this video will help you feel a little bit more prepared to dive into everything this incredible country has to offer.
If you have been to India before, feel free to share your comments and tips in the comment section below.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. Head over to our channel to watch our adventures around India. There's a video on New Delhi, another one on our experience staying in an ashram, which is an Indian monastery, and also another video on our hike in the Himalayas.
Otherwise, we'll see you in our next video, where we'll be traveling to Sri Lanka, which is our third country of our year-long travels. See you!
Yeah.